Good Sunday morning. Welcome to Inside Tennessee. I'm your moderator, John Becker. If the University of Tennessee is an economic engine, we are talking to the conductor this morning. President Randy Boyd of the University of Tennessee System is our guest. Great to have you with us.
Great to be with you, John. Great to be with Don.
Don Bosch. He is a Democrat, runs his own law firm, and is serving as the lone panelist because our Republican panelists had a last-minute scheduling conflict.
And good non-political show, so we're safe here this morning.
There you go. And our colleague John North is on the road, so he's disappointed he's missing you as well, Randy. But let's talk about your mission. In 2018, you took on this role as president of the University of Tennessee System. And just to get the conversation started, I want to put up a map here for our viewers to see. The system is much more than UTK. It's not just Rocky Top, but you're seeing some of the campuses on your screen. And President Boyd, you were talking about one thing you don't see, which is the health system.
That's right. Well, thank you for the introduction, and I haven't been called the conductor before, so maybe that'll stick. I don't know. But,
well, the sheriff is taken.
The sheriff is taken. This is right. No, I did start in 2018. You know, I was on a temporary basis for 6 months until they could find somebody qualified to do the job, and they're still looking, I guess, because here I am. But it's been the honor of my life to serve at the University of Tennessee, and my alma mater, and the University of Tennessee serves our state so well. In 2020, we announced that this was going to be the greatest decade in the history of the University of Tennessee. We're now 6 years into it. I think we're on our way. So you mentioned the UT Health Sciences. That's a key part of how we make this the greatest decade. You know, I used to be Commissioner of Economic and Community Development. And we would brag about all the great things that the state of Tennessee had: low taxes, great financial position, great infrastructure, great educational system. All these things we were very proud of. The one thing we never talked about was our public health. Across the board, from teenage obesity to smoking to cancer, on almost every score, we're one of the worst states in the country. So we have to address that, and the only way you can address the health of our population is by having healthcare professionals. And so the UT Health Sciences produces 70% of all the dentists in the state, 45% of all the doctors. So it's a really important part of the UT system. Sometimes here in Knoxville, we forget about the campus over in Memphis, but they're really not just Memphis. They like to say Memphis is our home, Tennessee is our campus, because they have over 850 different sites around the state. UT Medical Center, for example, most of the doctors there were UT faculty or UT faculty, and they have hundreds of residents that are training there. So everywhere you look, there are UT docs and UT students in that school. And the same can be said at Erlanger and Chattanooga or St. Thomas and in Nashville. But even small clinics all around the state have UT students and faculty training and teaching there.
Building on that, one of your slogans is Everywhere UT. And why is it important for a land-grant institution like the University of Tennessee to be everywhere in the state?
Yeah, so I think, thanks for bringing that up. We are the land-grant university of the state of Tennessee, and as that, we are charged with making lives better for the people of Tennessee. And I get sometimes frustrated when people talk about a particular, maybe a liberal arts college in the Northeast, and whatever model example they set, then they conflate it and say, well, that's higher education for you. Higher education is so diverse. You know, a small liberal arts college in the north versus a land-grant university in the south, completely different missions. There's nothing wrong with their mission. It's just very different. We belong to the state of Tennessee. We're here to serve the people of Tennessee. I spend a lot of my time going to Nashville and around the state and just asking people, how can the University of Tennessee make your lives better? How can we serve? And that's our mission. And so to do that, we are literally all across the state. You had your map. I'll mention there's also 95 extension offices, one in every county. We have 156,000 4-H students. So 4th graders to 8th graders learning about how to speak, how to do animal husbandry, also about civics. One of the most important things we need to improve in our state is our civics education, and 4-H is a way that we reach, again, 150,000 students a year.
Don, I want to bring you in, but just give me one second to ask another big picture question, and that is the university used to receive the bulk of its money from the state legislature.
That's right.
I believe it was 75% of the budget was from the state and 25% private, and that's really flipped. Explain that dynamic and why that presents a challenge and an opportunity.
Yeah, so it did change probably around 2007 to 2010, and this was across the country. And we went from 75% to roughly 33% now. Well, sometimes people talk about how higher education charged so much more than inflation back in that period of time. And it wasn't really because our costs were going up, they were just shifting. And I think that was a strategy by the government on purpose, that we're going to shift more to the students and the families and less from the state taxpayers. That's a philosophical decision they made, but the reality is now about a third of our income, our revenue, comes from the state. And we're very thankful for that, by the way. The state of Tennessee supports us better than most states around the country. So we're, even though it's less than it used to be, but it's still very, very generous. So we're incredibly thankful. A third of it comes from tuition, and having increasing enrollment every year really helps that equation. About another 20% comes from donations, and then another 10% comes from research.
So, Randy, we're talking about serving the state of Tennessee, and it's been interesting over the last number of years to watch sort of the fluctuation in in-state versus out-of-state students. And so I'm curious to, when you started, maybe back in 18 or 16, 18, and now, how has that number changed? And how does that metric apply when it comes to funding? Because, of course, out-of-state tuition is quite a bit higher. How does that help UT if we're increasing or decreasing our out-of-state population?
Yeah, so we're increasing our enrollment faster than the state's population is increasing. So every year our goal is to make sure that we enroll more Tennesseans. But every year we're also having tens of thousands of out-of-state students apply. So this past year, for example, we had roughly 13,000 students from in-state apply for 7,200 spots. We also had another 62,000 from out-of-state. So a very small percentage of the students from out-of-state are able to get in. But because we're growing enrollment faster than the state's population, just by definition, you're going to end up needing to take more out-of-state students to make that equation work. Roughly today, it's anywhere between 30 and 35% out-of-state, 65, 70% in-state.
And what was that 10 years ago?
10 years ago, it might have been closer to 80-20.
Okay.
So it has changed. But I think it's important for a couple of reasons to have out-of-state. I'll say here's three. One, it's good for our students to be exposed to other students from around the country. If they're going to college and it looks like high school, it's just more of us, I don't know if they get the same educational experience. Second, our state has to have immigration to meet the workforce needs. We're not producing enough people, enough talent by ourselves to be able to meet the workforce needs. So if our state's going to grow, we're going to have to bring talent from the outside, and our universities are the best way to do it.
And are we keeping those students here?
Yes, roughly about 40% of the students that come from out of state that come here will stay here.
Oh, I was one of those kids, so
yes.
back in the 80s, that's right.
Yeah, every now and then somebody will say, do we really need those out-of-state students? And I point to Don Bosch. I say, we need more Don
I don't know
Bosch.
I'm your best example, but thank you, Mr. President.
And sometimes if you get a little desperate, then I'll throw out, and Jim Haslam too.
There you go.
But I can't imagine our state without some of the great students that came from out of state. But back to your first point, financially though, it does help. The students from out of state pay 3 times as much,
right,
around $34,000 versus around $12,000, and so they do help subsidize our in-state students.
We've got to take a quick break on Inside Tennessee. Back with more and President Boyd right after this. Back on Inside Tennessee, a conversation about higher education, and that includes growth. We're talking with UT System President Randy Boyd, and on your screen right now, part of what he says will make this the greatest decade of the University of Tennessee system, and this is infrastructure. And you were seeing a national security prototype center, the Neyland Entertainment District, along with land transfer, supporting local health services, creating growth opportunities in Chattanooga. President Boyd, explain some of the pictures that we're seeing on the screen right now.
Well, one of them is the new National Security Prototype Center at Y12. This is a partnership with Y12. And one of the things that we're proud of at the University of Tennessee is our ability to partner. Most of our partners say that this is the golden years of partnership with the Farm Bureau. Our relationship couldn't be closer, Oak Ridge National Labs, and now with Y12. In this particular case, Y12 is building a facility for us to do research in. The contract that we have from the federal government to do research is roughly $20 million. Our lease payments to rent this space out is roughly $4 million. So it provides us a lot of opportunity to do more research, increase our research expenditures, and then partner with Y12 in some critical areas that they need research in. So that's an example of a way in which we can expand our reach, do good work and really do it with almost, in this case, zero capital outlay.
We saw the trustees give their blessing to the entertainment district.
Yes.
That's right outside Neyland Stadium. We will expect that the State Building Authority gives its blessing as well, but that's coming in the next few weeks. What can you tell our viewers about that complex and why you think it will be a good thing for the university?
So I'm going to disagree with you,
okay,
because I'm going to be in front of the State Building Commission in about a month, and if I say publicly that it's wrote that they're just going to vote for anything I present, they might just decide to make a point.
That might be the curse. Don't do that, John. Yeah.
So, but we have confidence that they will support the project. We usually don't instigate something without, or create something without having some consultation with them. But we're excited about this project. You know, I think the original idea was, how could we make the facade better on the riverside of the stadium? It was unattractive, and so, to create a facade would be like $50 million just for the aesthetics. That didn't make sense. Danny White, to his credit, had the idea to create this entertainment district, which does creates a beautiful facade for the building, but also generates all kinds of additional amenities for our students and our faculty, our staff, and our fans. You know, we only place athletic events in that area 40 days a year between men's basketball and women's basketball and the football games. But this will be something that our university gets to use year round. We'll have a conference center there, so we can have meetings and family gatherings and families and visiting researchers from around the world.
Hotel and living space there as well.
There's hotel and living space. So you've got three parts. There's the hotel, condominium, living space. Then we also have the entertainment area with all the restaurants. It'll be open up all the time. Again, another great amenity for everybody on the campus year round. And then we have a new parking garage, which I know there's some people that...
There's a lot of consternation about G10 going away.
But it's coming back. You know, and it's an unfortunate part of growth. Sometimes you have to have a pause for a short period of time. So it'll be, and we apologize, it'll be difficult for about 14 to 18 months, but what we get back will be a garage that's much bigger, or at least 20% bigger, with more modern technology telling you where all the spaces are, and it'll be a garage that'll last 100 years. So every 50 years or so, you have to suffer a little discomfort to make things better.
Generally, as it comes to funding, when we're building these new projects, and I think we were discussing a number of over $4 billion of infrastructure in the last 10 years, or within this 10-year period, either done, being done, or in the pipeline. How does that money split out? How much of that comes from the state and the taxpayers, so to speak? How much of that comes from donations, and how much of that comes from other sources, if you know roughly in percentages?
I don't know in percentages. That's an interesting question. There's certain projects that are private sector, like the facility we talked about at Y-12. That's coming from the federal government. The entertainment district will be 100% coming from private equity or private
No
enterprise.
tax dollars at all involved in that.
Zero tax dollars. In fact, we had a piece of land that was unused, and we're leasing it out for $1.5 million a year. Which it's found money, and then they're building $250 million worth of infrastructure. That's a great amenity. Doesn't cost us anything. Then we get an additional 3% on their revenue as it exceeds a certain amount. So that's a great example of using private dollars and doing what we call a public-private partnership, or P3. The rest is mostly from the state. Usually, for the state to fund a project, they require us to raise 10% in philanthropy, and then they'll fund the rest. And again, the state has been incredibly supportive of our efforts.
We're going to take another quick break on Inside Tennessee. Back with more of our conversation. How has NIL shaped the college game, including the atmosphere, not just on game days, but beyond? We'll ask the president that after this. Back on Inside Tennessee this morning, we're talking with UT System President Randy Boyd, and we talked about growth a little earlier, and I want to talk about quickly how the University of Tennessee looks compared to other peer institutions in the Midwest. We were talking off camera. They aren't seeing quite the growth or interest that we are at the University of Tennessee.
Yeah, I think across the nation, the University of Tennessee system is leading the way. It's not uncommon to see some flagships growing, but it's rare to see all of the other campuses, the regional campuses, growing. UT Knoxville is growing by leaps and bounds, but even UT Martin in Northwest Tennessee, that's seeing a population decline in that part of the state, saw a 10% increase the last 2 years in a row, which is truly exceptional. I want to come back to the infrastructure, because somebody might ask, well, why are you building all this infrastructure? We've got to have a place for our students to have to learn and have a great student experience, and so we have to keep up with their needs, and we're growing. When we started the decade, we're at 52,000 students. Now we're at 65. Our goal by the end of the decade is to get to 85,000. And some people might ask, well, why are you growing? Is this for your ego or for revenue or for rankings? And it's because, but no, it's none of those things. It's because as the land-grant University of the State of Tennessee, we need to do that to serve the people of Tennessee. We have two constituents that we need to grow for. Every year, especially this time of year, I get calls from parents and students that weren't able to get in, and it's heartbreaking when you have to say that we just don't have any more room. So we want to make sure we're giving more opportunity to more students. At the same time, everywhere I go across the state, employers are desperate for talent. They need teachers, and they need nurses, and they need engineers and nuclear engineers, all the things that we produce. And so both constituents need us to grow. So we're growing because that's part of our mission as the land-grant university.
And what component is the online education serving in that role? You know, we were really sort of behind the curve 10 years ago with little to no online education. COVID hits. We've got to catch up as an institution. Now we're sort of meeting those standards. What has that played in the increase in student population and funding to the university?
Well, our online education is growing fast, and as we look forward by the year 2030, about 80% of that 20,000 student growth will come from online.
Wow.
I want to shift to athletics because this is something we have seen monumental changes in with NIL, and we just seem like the space has changed so much in just a few years. Explain the impact that it's had on student athletes as well as coaches.
Let me say first, I give a shout out to Chancellor Dondi Plowman and our athletic director, Danny White. They're on the forefront of trying to courageously lead us to a new future. And so I just want to commend them for all their leadership in this space. So my job is to support them, but that doesn't keep me from having opinions. So I'll just share that I think there's three things. People point to NIL, but also eligibility. Requirements have gotten lax, and when you can have people that have been professional athletes come back into the college game, that's not helping the game's integrity. And also the transfer portal. Maybe of all the things, the transfer portal where the entire roster leaves every year, it's hard for fans to build loyalty. It's hard for coaches to build consistency. I think it's really maybe the most destructive part of what we're seeing. This past year in men's basketball, of 3,500 players that could come back, 2,900 of them entered the transfer portal. So UT had a problem, but everybody across the nation had a problem.
And we've heard from everybody across the nation saying something has to change. How does it change, and when will it change?
Well, there's a lot of, it needs to start with the federal government. There needs to be some antitrust exemptions so that we can set certain rules and policies in place like other professional sports do.
Because we're really a professional league now in college, aren't we?
I think yes.
Yeah,
the short answer is just
I know
yes.
it's a tough question to sort of fess up to and own up to, but we're pro league.
And I think that, and we've talked about this, but I think the term NIL, and I've had one of my board members use this term, that the way we use it is intellectually dishonest. NIL employees were just paying for name, image, and likeness. There is some name, image, likeness, but it's not the majority. Most of it is pay for play these days, and we have to be honest with ourselves, and then look to creating potential new structures where we can compensate the athletes, and they're going to have a seat at the table. And unfortunately, most of the solutions that have been talked about so far have been talked about, no offense, but from attorneys to attorneys, politicians, and the athletes aren't sitting at the table.
No, they need representation. They need to be at the table. They need to have a voice, even if they're 17, 18 years old.
Yeah. That's until we can get to that point where that we can recognize that we're paying the athletes, they're employees, and they have representation. We're not going to come to a solution.
So how does it affect, though, these student athletes that are coming in, and we're largely talking about football and basketball, maybe a few other sports, women's basketball, men's baseball, but how is it affecting their desire to be student athletes, student first? Are they still interested in getting a degree and going to school, or are they just here for the money?
I can't speak to that. I don't know that I've seen a survey, and I can't say qualitatively what each of them are thinking, but I will say that as a higher education professional and focused on student success and graduation, every study shows if you're changing schools every year, it's not going to help you get your degree on time, if at all.
You are attending lots of graduations this time of year. What is your advice for graduates who are entering the world right now? You've been an entrepreneur. You have done extraordinary things in terms of benefiting our community in your generosity and your family's generosity. What do you say to young graduates?
Well, I do have 3 bits of advice. I think we have limited time. I'll tell you the one that I like to start off with. And it's when I tell them, when I'm doing the ceremonies, that I believe I'll be the only commencement speaker in the country that will give them this advice. And my charge to them is to go forth and fail. And the reason why I say that, you learn more from your mistakes than you do from your successes. They're young, so they don't probably have much. So if you lose everything, you didn't lose a lot. And third, you've got the rest of your life to benefit from those mistakes and from those lessons that you learn. So take some chances, be bold, go forth and take some risks that you might not otherwise have, because when you get older, you're probably not going to be able to do it.
And ABC, always be closing.
Always be closing.
A Randy Boyd staple. We appreciate the time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, John.
Thanks, Randy.
We'll see you back here in moments for a little perspective from Don Bosch right after this. Back with Don Bosch and some perspective on a couple of topics. We call it What's the Gossip because we dearly miss our friend Dennis Francis.
We do.
He would always call us and ask that. So, Don, let's talk about NIL. We ended our conversation with President Boyd on that. How quickly can all the parties get in the room and make some changes? Because I don't know many people, if any at all, who say right now it's working.
Well, Randy said some insightful things. One, we do have to find a mechanism for the athletes to have a seat at the table. This is really affecting their lives, their livelihoods. As much as the fans are invested, the universities are invested, the donors and partners are invested, it really is about the athletes. So they've got to have a voice, and until that happens, it'll be tough. Two, there has to be an overarching body. There either has to be a commission like there is the NFL or MLB or the major sports leagues, because it is a major sports league. It's university sports, football, basketball, to an extent baseball, women's basketball. But there has to be, whether it's federal government or whether it's a separate commission, there has to be some legislation, some governance overarching to make this work. Three, the transfer portal is a real problem. We've seen basically our entire men's basketball team turn over. We've seen a good portion of our football team turn over and a good portion of new ones coming in. It does not breed fan loyalty. Fans still go because they want to see a winning product. But I think there has to be some limitations on how frequently you can transfer and what windows you can come in and out, because it's very difficult for the coaches to build programs around transient kids.
But we're still years away from any solution?
I think we're, to be safe, we'll start to see some incremental changes over the next year or two, but it's probably 5 years before there's a hard place structure that's going to withstand court challenges, withstand Title IX challenges, and suit the majority of athletes coming in.
Only about a minute left, but we saw some sweeping indictments involving almost a dozen employees who are current or former employees of the Knox County Sheriff's Office. It was a historic move by federal prosecutors before, now state prosecutors now. That's the state case we're interested in. How long might this continue?
Well, the federal case only involved one defendant. This case involves 11, and one of those 11 is also the federal defendant. I think the state case is probably going to take 12 to 18 months to come to conclusion, or largely to conclusion. Really depends on whether there were any preliminary negotiations on some of the parties, some of the things going on. My sense is there was not, but it's going to be an interesting ride because 2 of the 4 sheriff's candidates, both losing candidates, were named in this state indictment. These are Class A felonies carrying mandatory jail time, 15 to 25 years. So these are very serious charges that are going to be difficult for some people to stay out of jail if they are convicted. Remember, they're presumed innocent as we sit here right now.
Don Bosch, with that perspective, we appreciate you coming in. And we'll see you next week right here on Inside Tennessee. A mayor will be with us. We'll let you find out who.